Hello there, this is Heirs to the Kingdom channel, and today's lesson we're doing chapter 23 in the book of 2Kings. If you're new to this, it's a Bible study channel going through the King James Bible, not skipping anything as scriptures command. So if you would, like, subscribe, and share this content, and let's get started. So last we left off, I'm not going to really repeat all the king's names, but the one king did right in the eyes of the Lord. He passed away. Next one son did evil. And so then his son did evil, and then the son after that did right. Now there's a punishment coming upon the land that's guaranteed because things have already been put in motion because of the one that did evil in the sight of the Lord passed his son through fire that, murdered innocent people, especially his own children. Murdering babies is one thing that God hates the most. So if you think you're going to be an abortionist and get into heaven, you are sadly mistaken. But those people don't believe in God, heaven, hell, nothing anyways. They'll find out one day, but then it'll be too late. Now, the last king so far that did right, they found the book of the word that they had so far from Moses and everything else, which had pretty much been misplaced and no longer read. And so there was a big change throughout the land because they were reading the word and found out how evil his fathers before him were. That's why evil has to come to the land. They also defiled the temple. The temple is going to have to be destroyed. We're still with the temple that Solomon built. And it will no longer be standing because it had been defiled. They have sacrificed to false gods in that same temple. But the temple is rebuilt a couple of times because of this. And so let's go and get started today in chapter 23, verse 1. And the king sent, and they gathered unto him all the elders of Judah and of Jerusalem. And the king went up into the house of the Lord, and all the men of Judah, and all the inhabitants of Jerusalem with him, and the priests and the prophets, and all the people, both small and great. And he read in their ears all the words of the book of the covenant, which was found in the house of the Lord. And the king stood by a pillar and made a covenant before the Lord to walk after the Lord and to keep his commandments and his testimonies and his statutes with all their heart and all their soul, to perform the words of this covenant that are written in the book. And all the people stood to the covenant. And the king commanded Hilkiah the high priest and the priest of the second order and the keepers of the door to bring forth out of the temple of the Lord all the vessels that were made for Baal, and for the grove, and for all the host of heaven. And he burned them without Jerusalem in the fields of Kidron, and carried the ashes of them unto Bethel. So he's cleaning house and trying to make things right. Verse 5. And he put down the idolatrous priest whom the kings of Judah had ordained to burn incense in the high places, in the cities of Judah, and in the places round about Jerusalem, them also that burned incense unto Baal, to the sun, and to the moon, and to the planets, and to all the host of heaven. So here he says, to the sun and moon. We know that also these false gods that the Greeks worshipped, Zeus and all that other stuff, is part of this because you got the sun god. I think they called him Ra, the sun god, and stuff like that. So even the Greeks worshipped these false gods. I said that they believed in Zeus and Aphrodite and all that other stuff. I can't remember them all right now, but yeah. But even in those stories of Zeus and Hades, there was a heaven and a hell, a good place and a bad place. And that's what they strived for, was go to the good place. It's just they were worshiping the wrong things. the false gods. But anyways, I find it funny that we've had movies like Clash of the Titans, this, that, and the other, Story of Hercules, and all this. You know, those have been made into movies and made lots of money and this, that, and the other. But they make movies about God and not so much. And it's kind of sad that people will, you know, the other gods were violent. A lot of action and this, that, and the other, a lot of drama. And God's not that way. But I guess that they count it as entertainment. Anyways, let's continue on here, verse 6. And he brought out the grove from the house of the Lord without Jerusalem unto the brook Kidron, and burned it at the brook Kidron, and stamped it small to powder, and cast the powder thereof upon the graves of the children of the people. And he brake down the houses of the Sodomites that were by the house of the Lord, where the women wove hangings for the grove. Now the Sodomites, though we know what a sodomy is, so that would be the homosexuals. And, so they've been trying to infiltrate societies, this, that, and the other for a very long time. And in ungodly areas, they're allowed to flourish. They're encouraged even. And so, this has been going on for a long time. A lot of people sitting there think that today's times and what's going on is all new. And it's like, you have no idea. But as Proverbs says, there's nothing new under the sun. And the more we read Scripture and understand the history of the world and everything else, we clearly see that that is true. Verse 8, and he brought all the priests out of the cities of Judah and defiled the high places where the priest had burned incense from Geba to Beersheba, and brake down the high places of the gates that were in the entering in of the gate of Joshua, the governor of the city, which were on a man's left hand at the gate of the city. Nevertheless, the priests of the high places came not up to the altar of the Lord in Jerusalem, but they did eat of the unleavened bread among their brethren. And he defiled Topheth, which is in the valley of the children of Hinnom, that no man might make his son or his daughter to pass through the fire of Molech. So, like I said, Molech is the false god. I think they also did it to Beelzebub and Baal. But the demon is still alive and well that gets people to do these things. It's just now it's called feminism and abortion. But, it's the same disobedience, the same atrocities, and the same murdering of the most innocent of all. There's nothing new under the sun. It's just been repackaged and renamed, but it's still the same evil. Verse 11, and he took away the horses that the kings of Judah had given to the sun at the entering in of the house of the Lord by the chamber of Nathan Melech, the chamberlain, which was in the suburbs, and burned the chariots of the sun with fire. So, of course, the chariots of the sun would be the things that was for the sun god, I guess. That probably had that emblem or stuff in it, carved into it. Verse 12, and the altars that were on the top of the upper chamber of Ahaz, which the kings of Judah had made, and the altars which Manasseh had made in the two courts of the house of the Lord, did the king beat down and break them down from thence, and cast the dust of them into the brook Kidron. And the high places that were before Jerusalem, which were on the right hand of the mount of corruption, which Solomon the king of Israel had builded for Ashtoreth, the abomination of the Zidonians, and for Chemosh, the abomination of the Moabites, and for Milcom, the abomination of the children of Ammon, did the king defile. So we also have to remember that King Solomon started worshiping false gods as well at during the end times. So there's been a lot of stuff going wrong ever since King David. And it doesn't take long. It's like the saying, like the scriptures talk about, unleavened bread, a little leaven leavens a lump. It says a little sin makes the whole thing sin. Verse 14, and he brake in pieces the images and cut down the groves and filled their places with the bones of men. Moreover, the altar that was at Bethel and the high place which Jeroboam the son of Nebat, who made Israel to sin, had made, both the altar and the high place, he brake down and burned the high place and stamped it small to powder and burned the grove. And as Josiah turned himself, he spied the sepulchres that were there in the mount, and sent and took the bones out of the sepulchres and burned them upon the altar and polluted it, according to the word of the Lord which the man of God proclaimed, who proclaimed these words. Then he said, what title is that I see? And the men of the city told him, it is the sepulchre of the man of God, which came from Judah, and proclaimed these things that thou hast done against the altar of Bethel. And he said, let him alone, let no man move his bones. So they let his bones alone, with the bones of the prophet that came out of Samaria. And all the houses also of the high places that were in the cities of Samaria, which the kings of Israel had made to provoke the Lord to anger, Josiah took away and did to them according to all the acts that he had done in Bethel. And he slew all the priests of the high places that were there upon the altars, and burned men's bones upon them, and returned to Jerusalem. And the king commanded all the people, saying, keep the Passover unto the Lord your God, as it is written in the book of this covenant. Surely there was not holden such a Passover from the days of the judges that judged Israel, nor in all the days of the kings of Israel, nor of the kings of Judah. But in the 18th year of King Josiah, wherein this Passover was holden to the Lord in Jerusalem. Moreover, the workers with familiar spirits, and the wizards, and the images, and the idols, and all the abominations that were spied in the land of Judah and in Jerusalem, did Josiah put away, that he might perform the words of the law which were written in the book that Hilkiah the priest found in the house of the Lord. And like unto him was there no king before him that turned to the Lord with all his heart, and with all his soul, and with all his might, according to all the law of Moses, neither after him arose there any like him. So we know from this saying that it ain't saying that he was better than King David. It's just King David, he lived by the Lord his whole life. He messed up once or twice, but his whole life he dedicated to the Lord. This king was raised to sin against the Lord, and he decided to do right and do good, be a good-hearted person, not do bad things. And then they found the book of the Lord, and it's like, oh, here it is talking about all this stuff. And they read it, it's like, oh, we've been doing it so wrong, because he didn't know any better. He was raised wrong. This is why it's so important to raise your children reading all of the scripture, not just bits and pieces, all of it. Don't live your whole family by one verse of the Bible. You live by the whole Bible. But this would have taken lots of time, because they walked throughout the whole lands, the whole country. And so they had to walk everywhere in every area and this, that, and the other, and find these things. When it says, when they spied, that means, they were out looking for it and saw it and removed it, destroyed it, whatever it was. It says we got to purify our country. And he was so dedicated to it, that was his life's devotion at that time, was to get the country back to the Lord. get them back, understanding Scripture, sharing Scripture, learning Scripture, all the people knowing it. Because at one point in time, all the people in the land knew the Word, and, they shared with their families and raised their children by such. And it all got lost, and it's like people just quit following because they kept monkey see, monkey do. Whatever the leader started doing, they would follow the leader. Same thing's happening all around the world today. Even in America, the people are following what the politicians are doing. And a politician like, why are the people so evil? I'm like, maybe it's because of its leaders. They never stop and look in the mirror and look at themselves. They always want to blame someone else. And anyways, let's continue on here. You get the idea of that. But there was no other king like him that, was raised in a bad way and then came back and devoted so much to change things and makes things right, according to this, it says here in the Scripture. But this book was written before other things. Anyways, verse 26. Notwithstanding, the Lord turned not from the fierceness of his great wrath, wherewith his anger was kindled against Judah, because of all the provocations that Manasseh had provoked him withal. So Josiah here knew, he was already told by God through the prophetess at this time that this evil's still coming to the land because of what was done in it. Now, of course, some people saying, well, why should we change things as evil's coming anyway? It's like, it's to make things right regardless, because what is right to do is right to do. If it's wrong, it's wrong. If it's right, it's right, period. There are no in-betweens. And this is what we learn from Scripture, is we always do what's right, even if it doesn't make sense. That's when you do it the most. Why? Is to live by it. Anyways, let's continue on here. Verse 27. And the Lord said, I will remove Judah also out of my sight, as I have removed Israel, and will cast off this city Jerusalem, which I have chosen, and the house of which I said my name shall be there. Like I said, the temple has to be destroyed because it's been defiled. They cleaned it up, but the defiling is still there. This is why we have Christianity, to where we're made new in the eyes of the Lord when we get saved, is because we're born defiled. And that's why when we pass away, we leave this defiled body in the past. We're given a new one later. Until then, we live in the Spirit. But 28. Now the rest of the acts of Josiah and all that he did, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Judah? In his days, Pharaoh Necho, king of Egypt, went up against the king of Assyria to the river Euphrates. And King Josiah went against him, and he slew him at Megiddo, when he had seen him. And his servants carried him in a chariot dead from Megiddo, and brought him to Jerusalem, and buried him in his own sepulchre. And the people of the land took Jehoahaz, the son of Josiah, and anointed him, and made him king in his father's stead. Now the people did this, not God. The people anointed him. But Josiah died in battle. Very common for this to happen. Very, very, very common. But this is why normally now the leaders don't go to the front lines. They fight from the rear, because, they're trying to... That's why the communication stuff was so important to create, is so the leaders could give orders from safe distances and from other areas to see what's going on, instead of actually being there and only being in one part of the battle. It's, it's better to command an entire army from a different position. At those times, they didn't have that, so they had to give orders directly. Anyways, 31. Jehoahaz was 23 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 3 months in Jerusalem, and his mother's name was Humetal. Oh, good gracious. Hamutal. There he goes. I had to remember how to say that, and my dyslexia kicked in. I'm like, nope, that ain't right. Nope, that ain't right. Hamutal, the daughter of Jeremiah of Libnah. And he did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord, according to all that his fathers had done. And so, once again, you can do right all the time. Doesn't mean your children will follow. Even when you do your best to teach them right for wrong, it's what's their heart's desire. This is why the people should have waited to see who God anointed king instead of them doing it themselves. Humans do things by looks, height, and all this other stuff. And that is not the proper way of doing things. You do it by character and heart. But 33. And Pharaoh Necho put him in bands at Riblah in the land of Hamath, that he might not reign in Jerusalem, and put the land to a tribute of 100 talents of silver and a talent of gold. And Pharaoh Necho made Eliakim the son of Josiah king in the room of Josiah his father, and turned his name to Jehoiakim, and took Jehoahaz away, and he came to Egypt and died there. And Jehoiakim gave the silver and the gold to Pharaoh, but he taxed the land to give the money according to the commandment of Pharaoh. He exacted the silver and the gold of the people of the land, of everyone according to his taxation, to give it unto Pharaoh Necho. Jehoiakim was 25 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 11 years in Jerusalem, and his mother's name was Zebudah, the daughter of Pedaiah of Rumah. And he did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord, according to all that his fathers had done. And that's the end of this lesson today. And so, the dad did all that he could, but he did have multiple wives. You can see you hear the sons here of having different mothers. And so we always see a problem with this, that there's always children that just doesn't learn or follow what the dad's doing. When you're king, you have to give so much attention to society that you forget your own family. And this is how things like this can happen. God does not recommend a harem unless you can do so. He says it will bring problems to you to have a harem. He doesn't condemn it, but he also doesn't recommend it. It's also a commandment. If you're a priest, a deacon, or bishop of a church today, New Testament bans the leaders from having harems because they must have their house in order. God knows it's almost virtually impossible for a man to have multiple wives and lots of children and have his house in order and have the house of God in order as well. Because it's just too many people. Just way too many. That's what I get from when I read Scripture. I've been raised up with, well, if you're divorced and remarried, that means you have two wives, blah, blah, blah. And I don't think that's so, because Jesus gives a man a right to divorce and remarry if the divorce is from infidelity. If it's from pure disobedience, he is to divorce and stay single. But the children don't go to the woman. The children stay with the man. Those are his seed. Those are his saplings from his seed, not hers. And our society today is doing it all backwards with intent to destroy society, to break it down. And for the longest time, America was on the right path until 1920. They gave women the right to vote, and then it all started turning the opposite direction. I mean, there was saloons, there were harlots, there were whorehouses, this, that, and the other before then. But those are where the evil women went, and the good men didn't go to those places. Evil women flocked to those places and lived those lives. All of them had a chance to be a wife and mother, but they chose something different. or they'd end up being a barmaid, something like that. A lot of them would choose a hard life of being a servant, a cleaning girl, a maid. It says, but, it kept them honorable at the same time. It's, women chose the lives that they wanted to live, but they wanted a man's life because they thought it was so spectacular or something like that to be in charge. I'm like, it's a burden. It's not a privilege. Having the weight of the family, success and failures of society and everything else be on your shoulders, it's not a privilege. And also, God holds you to a higher standard. When you're in those positions, you are held to a higher standard. But anyways, like I said, I grew up hearing about things in Scripture being one way, and I look at it also as like I read from the Bible from beginning to end. I don't take that one part and try to live by that. And it's like, okay, well, what does he mean by having only one wife? Well, in their times, even when Jesus walked the earth, the priests had harems. People had harems. And it's like, that's too much. You can't run the church and be over the congregation and have a harem. That's just what comes to my mind about it all. It's like the disciples, they left their families to be taken care of by other family members while they went out and became disciples. Their wives and children weren't with them because it takes a lot to live for the Lord and to share the word and travel. And you pulling a family with you, well, it's a lot harder. A lot of the disciples had wives and children, but they had to leave them to do other things. Like if you have a harem, that's a lot of responsibility having a harem. So, as I said, that's how I see things. I don't have anything in my heart telling me that I'm thinking wrong. I got people in churches telling me I'm thinking wrong. It says, but I don't have it in my heart from reading Scripture that I'm thinking wrong. But I'm not a preacher, deacon, or bishop either. So it's like, honestly, I don't think I want any of those positions really. If I'm asked to be one, okay, but I don't desire positions of authority because I know how I'm a human. I'm weak. We all are. And I don't want it. I don't think anybody should want a position of authority. Should not be something you desire. If you do, then, chances are that's where your heart lies. That's the desire of your heart. My desire is just trying to be a good Christian, not try to be a leader. If I'm called to be is one thing, but I don't desire it. Anyways, it causes problems. It really does. And so a man has always been commanded to provide, protect, educate, and lead. So he's to know all his children, what they're doing, their heart's desires, who they are, and everything of that nature. And my whole life was never that way. My dad didn't do that with me. I never got to have children to learn this, but as I said, there's a lot put on the leader's shoulders, and you're held to a higher standard. But I'm going to go ahead and end this lesson here today. These are all things to pray about. I do not know your situation, your lives, what's going on. You do. I don't. God does. I don't. All I know is my situation and the people around me. There's always things to pray about and always lots of things to pray about. And the lost to found, yourself, others, all people, all nations, everywhere, everything. And never forget to ask for a double portion. If you don't get it, okay, but hey, if you get it, hey, imagine that. I'm still praying it. Haven't gotten it yet. But ain't saying I won't. Maybe my double portion is whenever I leave here and get up there with the Master, with the Father. Who knows? Never forget to give God all the praise, glory, and worship and thanks in everything, the good, the bad, the ugly, and the indifferent. I'm going to end this lesson here. So until next time, God bless, good day, and goodbye.